I was 19, broke, and desperate to afford a biology textbook when I took a babysitting job in Crestmore Hills. The house was absurd. Think marble staircase, security cameras blinking from every corner, and a driveway that could host a small wedding. I barely had time to process it before Mrs. Tinky swanned to the door in a gown that probably cost more than my semester. "Blake's a little spirited," she said, handing me a black Amex. "Call if there's an emergency." Then she vanished into a waiting limo. Inside, her son Blake, age 8, was sprawled on the couch, glued to his iPad. When I asked what he wanted for dinner, he mumbled, "McDonald's," without looking up. I placed the order, 2 Big Macs, 20 nuggets, a large fry, and a vanilla shake. Figured he wouldn't finish half of it. He didn't speak a word until the food arrived 40 minutes later. Then he exploded. "The fries are cold." Before I could say I'd heat them up, he launched the entire bag at the wall. Nuggets hit the ceiling. The milkshake burst on impact, dripping down the wallpaper like a horror scene in Derry. I was too stunned to move. Blake screamed I was the worst babysitter ever, and that he wanted his nanny. Then he grabbed a metal baseball bat and slammed it into my shins, repeatedly. I shielded myself with a couch cushion, yanked the bat away, and told him he was going in timeout. He laughed in my face. "Timeouts are for babies." Then he bit my hand when I tried to take his iPad. I got the device and shoved it on top of the fridge. That's when Blake truly lost it. He shouted, "You don't know who my dad is. He'll sue you into the ground. You'll be poor forever." I turned to clean the mess. When I turned back around, he was standing there with a knife. Not a toy. A real carving knife from the kitchen block. His voice went low. "Give me my iPad. Or say goodnight." He was between me and the door. My heart nearly stopped. I kept my voice calm. Told him I'd give it back if he put the knife down first. He hesitated, then set it on the counter, hand hovering close. I lunged and grabbed it. In the scuffle, I twisted my ankle and collapsed. He just stood there laughing. "You're broken," he shrieked, pointing at me like it was a joke. I crawled to my phone and called the Tinkies. Mrs. Tinky sounded annoyed, until I mentioned the knife. Suddenly, I heard her shouting for her husband. They said they'd be home in 20 minutes. By the time they arrived, I was on the couch, ankle swollen, ice pack clutched to it. Blake was playing with action figures, calm as can be. Mr. Tinky didn't speak. He walked in, picked up the bat, marched over to the fridge, grabbed Blake's iPad, and smashed it to pieces. Blake went from smug to shrieking in seconds. Mr. Tinky said, "You threatened someone with a knife over a game. You don't deserve anything." They covered my ER visit. Then came the offer. Tuition paid in full if I kept quiet. I nodded. Then I sued them anyway, because the deal was verbal. 3 days later, a thick envelope landed in my dorm room. Legalese from a firm with 5 last names. It accused me of violating the agreement and demanded I retract all public statements. I tossed it on the desk and iced my ankle. Again, their insurance dragged its feet on my medical bills, asking for new forms every day. Meanwhile, I started getting anonymous notes slipped under my door. One of them listed my class schedule and said I should watch where I'm going. Suddenly, I couldn't tell if I was being followed or just paranoid. Either way, I stopped going to my usual spots. But the feeling of being watched never really left. Everywhere I went, I saw them. A man in a suit with an earpiece loitering outside the library. A woman with oversized sunglasses who always seemed to sit a few tables away no matter which cafe I chose. My roommate told me I was being paranoid. I wasn't. The Tinkies were watching me. Then came the meeting with my pre-med advisor. She'd received an anonymous letter raising serious concerns about my character. The letter claimed I was emotionally unstable, manipulative, and prone to false accusations. It was printed on thick cream paper with no typos, clearly written by someone with money and time. I showed her my medical records. Photos of my bruised shins. The ER bill. She listened, gently, and then gave me a warning that chilled me more than the letter. "If you want to practice medicine in this city," she said, "you'll need to be aware of who has influence." Translation: the Tinkies had friends everywhere. That weekend, my mom called me crying. Her boss had received photos of me from a college birthday party, red Solo cup in hand, mid-laugh, cake in the background. Cropped and reframed, they made it look like I was blackout drunk and stumbling. My mom believed me, but her coworkers whispered behind her back. Didn't raise her right. No wonder she's in trouble. That kind of thing. Back on campus, people started avoiding me. My study group suddenly had conflicts. Friends found new tables at lunch. Sarah, the one person who still talked to me, finally pulled me aside. "People think you're so happy," she said, "that you turn on anyone for a payout. They're scared." I didn't blame them. In a competitive pre-med program, your reputation is oxygen. The Tinkies knew that, and they were cutting off my air supply. The stress tanked my grades. I failed my anatomy quiz. Then the creepy stuff started. Middle of the night calls with silence on the other end. Breathing. Sometimes a child's voice whispering, "Give me my iPad or say goodnight." I changed my number. The calls continued. My social media got hacked. Disturbing posts appeared under my name, until I deleted them. But the screenshots lived on. "Is she okay? Who even is this girl?" The whispers grew louder than the truth. Then the scholarship committee requested a meeting. Someone had raised character concerns. 5 professors. One long table. My hands shook as I laid everything out. The photos, the reports, the police record, the injury files. They said they needed time to review. Until then, my scholarship was frozen. I couldn't afford another semester. That night, I sat in my dorm room with every door locked, writing down everything I'd experienced. Every threat, every phone call, every creepy message, sabotage, or legal stunt. I had an evidence folder growing thicker by the hour. But emotionally, I felt more alone than ever. And then I remembered Blake, standing in that kitchen, holding that knife. I remembered the way his dad looked bored while offering to buy my silence. I remembered their assumption that because I was poor, I'd fold. Because I needed one textbook, I'd let it all go. And then I got angry. I started researching the Tinky family, who they knew, what they owned, where their money came from. I learned quickly, their reputation wasn't just local. It was institutional. But the crack came from inside. A housekeeper who'd worked for them for 10 years reached out through a mutual friend. She said Blake had a history. Multiple nannies had quit after being bitten, hit, or verbally abused. A tutor needed stitches after Blake bit her arm. He'd once pushed a neighbor's kid down a flight of stairs. Each time, the Tinkies wrote a check and made it vanish. She gave me contacts for 2 former employees. Both were terrified, but eventually agreed to meet. They showed me their injuries, bruises, bite marks, photographs. One had kept a journal of everything. They'd signed NDAs, but they were done being afraid. I started building a real case file. Statements, time-stamped photos, school records. The pattern was chilling. Blake had been violent for years, and the Tinkies had shielded him at every turn, turning money into a weapon. They must have sensed I was gaining ground. That same week, my tires were slashed. The library's security camera malfunctioned, while my laptop was stolen. My cloud backups were safe, but I couldn't study, write, or submit anything on time. Then came the worst blow. Marcus, my best friend, my anchor, stopped talking to me. His internship at the local hospital was on the line. They're connected to the board, he said. I have to think about my future. He walked out of my life without looking back. I sat in my dorm room that night staring at my battered case file, wondering if they'd finally broken me. My grades were slipping. My funding was gone. My name was dirt on campus. And now I had no one left. Then, a text from an unknown number. A photo of Blake on the playground at his private school, holding another kid in a headlock while 2 teachers tried to break it up. The caption, "This was yesterday. The parents are furious. The school is considering expulsion." That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about me anymore. Blake was escalating. If I gave up, someone else, maybe a babysitter, maybe another kid, was going to get hurt. Or worse, the Tinkies weren't just entitled. They were dangerous. So I doubled down. I started photographing everything. Screenshots, messages, tire damage, camera logs. I organized them into categories: harassment, retaliation, witness testimony, financial coercion. And for the first time, I felt like I had power. Because the Tinkies made one mistake. They assumed I'd stay quiet. They never imagined I'd fight back. The Tinkies had gotten sloppy. That's how it started to unravel. I met the mom who sent the playground photo, Blake in a headlock with another kid, at a coffee shop near campus. She didn't come alone. 2 other moms were with her, each looking more exhausted than the last. One showed me medical records. Her daughter needed antibiotics after Blake bit her arm. Another had security footage of Blake throwing rocks at moving cars in the school parking lot. They'd all filed complaints. Nothing happened. Every time, the Tinkies wrote a check or hosted a fundraiser, and everything got swept away. They'd started a small group, a quiet network of parents who were done being silent. They handed me copies of their evidence. One of them, Vicky, worked for a local paper. She pulled public court records and showed me a pattern: settlements, sealed complaints, non-disclosure agreements. The playbook was always the same: pay, threaten, erase. I felt less alone for the first time in months. But the Tinkies weren't finished with me. My landlord called. He'd received an anonymous letter with photos of a trashed apartment, claiming it was mine. It wasn't. The photos were obviously staged: overturned furniture, holes in the wall, beer bottles, but they looked legit. Professional. I had 30 days to leave or face eviction. Finding a new place should have been easy. Instead, every landlord I talked to changed their tone after running background checks. One finally admitted someone was calling around, warning that I was unstable and litigious. My parents offered to let me move home, but that meant giving up school. And that's exactly what the Tinkies wanted. I started crashing on couches. That didn't last. Friends got anonymous texts saying they were harboring a liability. Some got calls telling them their financial aid or internships might be at risk by association. Meanwhile, school kept crumbling. My lab partner dropped our project. Professors stopped answering emails. One even marked me absent when I'd been in class. My student loan suddenly got flagged for irregularities. I couldn't buy books, couldn't eat. I pawned my tablet and wore the same hoodie 3 days in a row. I got thinner, tired. My hands trembled from stress-induced migraines. I couldn't afford my anxiety meds, and every night I lay in bed wondering how much more I could take. Then hope. Vicky called. Blake had been suspended. He'd injured another student badly, so badly the school couldn't hide it. A group of parents was threatening to pull their kids if Blake stayed enrolled. I reached out to the injured child's parents. They were horrified, but not surprised. They'd heard rumors. Now, they had confirmation. We compared stories. The timeline went back years, and it was escalating. That's when we formed a real coalition. A private group chat, shared documents, scans of injuries, screenshots of threatening emails, former nannies, ex-tutors. One woman showed me pages from a journal she'd kept while employed by the Tinkies, filled with incident reports they made her rewrite or destroy. Blake's record was a time bomb, and we were done letting them reset the clock. Then came the scholarship committee's decision. I'd get partial funding, on the condition that I reduced my course load and submitted to monthly character checks. It felt like being put on parole for surviving an assault. Still, it was better than nothing. The Tinkies, sensing things slipping, fired back. A formal cease and desist arrived in a fancy envelope. They accused me of harassment, defamation, and warned that further contact with other families would result in escalated legal consequences. I read it 3 times, and put it straight into the evidence folder. Their intimidation tactics weren't working anymore. But the sabotage hadn't stopped. Someone poured sugar in my gas tank. My car died. Repairs would have cost more than the car was worth. I walked to class in the rain, late to every exam, constantly on edge. Professors stopped accepting my work due to tardiness. They were trying to grind me down into dust. Then something unexpected happened. Sarah came back. She found me in the library, eyes ringed with exhaustion. I messed up, she said. She distanced herself after someone threatened to tank her med school applications if she stayed close to me. But watching me walk through hell alone had eaten at her. She wanted to help. I let her. She shared notes, tutored me, helped me rebuild my academic standing piece by piece. More importantly, she started speaking up. One classmate joined her. Then 2. Then more. People started questioning the narrative. Then the Tinkies made a critical error. They tried to bribe one of the parents in our coalition. The Tinkies made their boldest move yet, and it backfired. They offered Benji's mom $50,000 to drop her complaint and cut ties with the rest of us. Instead of taking the bribe, she recorded the whole conversation. Hearing Mrs. Tinkie's voice, smug and desperate, laying out exactly how far they'd go to preserve their spotless image, it was like listening to someone confess behind a mask. We didn't threaten them. We didn't post it. We just let them know the recording existed, and that multiple families had copies. The power dynamic shifted for the first time. They couldn't bully all of us at once without tripping their own alarm. Around the same time, my living situation finally stabilized. An older couple from my mom's church offered me their basement apartment rent-free. They said, "You focus on school. We've got the rest." The Tinkies couldn't touch them. They weren't on social media, they weren't scared, and they had nothing to lose. I dove back into academics with everything I had. When the insurance company kept delaying payments, I threatened to expose them too, and magically, the reimbursements started rolling in. Not all of it, but enough to breathe. Meanwhile, Blake kept being Blake. At his new school, he injured 2 kids and smashed a bathroom sink. The Tinkies tried the same hush money routine, but this school didn't care about gala invites or gift baskets. They suggested Blake needed specialized care. Mr. Tinky took it as an insult. Mrs. Tinky took it as betrayal. Even their own marriage started to crack. Vicky, through her newsroom connections, heard about the fights. Mrs. Tinky wanted to send Blake to a therapeutic boarding school. Mr. Tinky refused. Their once perfect image was breaking from the inside. More parents came forward, some from Blake's kindergarten days. Every new voice helped us build the full picture. A violent kid, protected by wealthy parents who weaponized money and shame. Then, Blake crossed a line that couldn't be erased. He threw a metal object during a tantrum and concussed a teacher. She ended up in the hospital and, unlike others, filed a police report. The Tinkies tried to pay her off, but she wouldn't budge. Now there was an official record. Finally, we moved fast. Every parent in our group filed formal complaints with the school board. We didn't go public. We didn't need to. The pressure behind closed doors was enough. They knew. They had documents, photos, timelines, eyewitnesses. This wasn't going away quietly. Even Marcus, my former best friend, circled back. He apologized for ghosting me when the heat got intense. Said he'd gotten his hospital internship, but couldn't shake the guilt. He gave me names, board members who were friendly with the Tinkies, and who wasn't. I thanked him, but I didn't let him back in. Trust isn't a light switch. The Tinkies responded the only way they knew how, by escalating. They hired a private investigator to dig into my childhood, my family's finances, anything. Friends from back home warned me about strange questions. The Tinkies were desperate for dirt, but I'd already gone through my darkest moments. There was nothing left to dig up that could stop me. My grades rose. My professors noticed. Some offered extensions. A few even apologized for believing the rumors. The lies stopped sticking. I wasn't just surviving, I was regaining control. The parents in our coalition took things further. We secured a meeting with the school district superintendent, compiling everything into a master file. Photos, injury reports, audio recordings, even video clips. The superintendent agreed to meet next month. I finally had something I hadn't felt in ages, momentum. The Tinkies tried another intimidation blitz. Their lawyers sent cease and desist letters to every parent in our group, accusing us of conspiracy and defamation. Instead of cowering, we pulled together and hired our own legal team. Turns out, everything we were doing was protected. Coordinated advocacy, documentation, truth. Then came the moment that shattered their grip completely. Blake attacked a younger child at a public playground. This time, in front of dozens of witnesses. Phones came out. Videos were uploaded before the Tinkies could stop it. Within hours, the footage was in private parent groups, local forums, even trending in a small corner of Twitter. Blake's name wasn't in the captions, but everyone knew. I spent my winter break organizing the chaos. My one small folder had become 4 binders, labeled and tabbed. I made backups, encrypted drives, emailed copies to trusted allies. The Tinkies taught me to be afraid, but they also taught me how to protect myself. My relationship with my parents grew stronger. My mom stood by me when things were darkest. My dad helped me understand legal strategy, reviewing every letter that came in. They saw I wasn't just a scared student anymore. I was building a case. The new semester started. I was still bruised, but not broken. My study group reformed, with people who had seen the smear campaign for what it was. We pushed each other, competed again, laughed like real students do. I wasn't the girl who got sued by a rich family anymore. I was just someone who refused to back down. The Tinkies sent a lawyer to meet with me privately. He wore a $4,000 suit and smiled like I was a menu item. Sarah came with me, just in case. He slid a piece of paper across the table and said, "This is enough to pay for your entire medical school education, plus some." All I had to do was sign. A full NDA. No more speaking out. No more sharing evidence. No more truth. For one moment, I actually considered it. I was tired, broke, burned out. That money could fix everything. But then I pictured the teacher Blake sent to the hospital. The kids with bite marks. The parents who cried to me over coffee because they felt helpless. I looked him in the eye and said, "No." For the first time in months, I felt lighter walking out of that meeting. Our next move was the superintendent hearing. Families from our parent network rehearsed every detail. We built a full presentation. Timelines, medical records, school memos, even fake meeting logs the Tinkies had tried to plant. We were ready for a war fought with binders and screenshots. The Tinkies, of course, sent reps, polished, cold, but not invincible anymore. In the meantime, my academic life took a sharp turn, for the better. I made the dean's list. My advisor, the same one who once doubted me, wrote a glowing letter documenting everything I'd survived and how I kept going. One day, we caught the Tinkies trying to infiltrate our group. They sent someone pretending to be a concerned parent. Sloppy story. Inconsistent timeline. Instead of kicking them out, we played along, fed them fake meeting locations, and watched as the Tinky legal team showed up to empty rooms across town. It was pitiful and hilarious. We documented it all. Blake? He got expelled from his third school in 6 months. Even money can't fix everything when every principal in the region has your kid's name in bold red ink. Still, the Tinkies weren't done. They had one more trick, sympathy. They offered $50,000 to Benji's mom, hoping to fracture our group. She recorded the whole thing. When we shared the news, no threats, just facts, they panicked. Suddenly, settlement offers replaced threats. But we weren't interested in cash. We were building change. I moved into a stable basement apartment offered by an elderly couple from my mom's church. Rent-free, safe, no landlord to manipulate. I studied like my future depended on it, because it did. And I got better at surviving, navigating insurance delays, filing paperwork, protecting myself. Blake transferred again. Within weeks, he'd already hurt 2 students and punched a hole in a classroom wall. Administrators recommended therapy. The Tinkies called it character assassination. At this point, even other rich families were side-eyeing them. We created a massive timeline of Blake's violent history, dating back to kindergarten. The pattern was undeniable. The cover-ups, payments, NDAs, it all pointed to a system that protected the problem instead of solving it. Then Blake hurt a teacher. A real, grown adult. She pressed charges. Hospitalized with a concussion. That's when things tipped. Our group coordinated complaints. Not to the school, to the school board. Every family submitted formal reports, backed by receipts and records. The board finally saw the storm coming. Even Marcus came crawling back, offering names of hospital execs linked to the Tinkies. I didn't trust him, but I used the info. Every connection helped. By spring, the game had changed. The Tinkies were on the defense. Their intimidation slowed. They knew the walls were closing in. At the hospital where I volunteered, I ran into Marcus again. He looked uncomfortable. "Some board members," he said, "are distancing themselves from the Tinkies. They're bad PR now." That same week, the investigation uncovered how Blake's schools had systematically failed to report violent behavior. Administrators had accepted donations in exchange for silence. The Tinkies weren't just a scandal. They were a symbol of how power corrupted accountability. Then Vicky, our journalist contact, published a story that didn't name names, but it didn't have to. The details were unmistakable. People were talking. In forums. In schools. In hospitals. The tide was turning. The Tinkies tried to save face with a huge donation to children's mental health services. No one bought it. How do you donate to mental health while refusing it for your own child? The irony was too thick to ignore. That same month, I got into a prestigious summer research program. The application committee said my resilience under systemic adversity stood out. I'd once begged for tuition help. Now my story was a reason to let me in. Our parent network evolved into something more, a full advocacy group. We created templates for documenting violence, resources for dealing with private school cover-ups, legal guides for parents too scared to fight alone. The Tinkies had tried to bury me. Instead, they helped build something bigger than themselves. As the semester ended, I sat on my tiny couch in that quiet basement, staring at a wall full of color-coded binders. The same girl who once took a babysitting gig just to buy a biology textbook was now helping rewrite how schools respond to violent kids with rich parents. And then Benji's mom sent a text. Another settlement offer. They want me to convince you to take it. I smiled. They still didn't get it. The latest offer from the Tinkies was their biggest yet. Enough money to erase all my debt, fund med school, and start a savings account. All they wanted was everything. Silence, deletion of every shred of evidence, and full NDA compliance. Their desperation bled through every line. I took it to the parent network. Blake was still hurting people. The schools were finally responding, but change was slow. We'd done the impossible, pulled back the curtain, but we weren't finished. Then my pre-med advisor called with unexpected news. A renowned surgeon had heard about my story and wanted to mentor me. She's dealt with power, backlash, and built her career anyway, my advisor said. She sees something in you. I didn't cry, but I came close. Meanwhile, the investigation into Blake's schools widened. Several administrators were now under scrutiny for suppressing violent incidents in exchange for donations. The Tinkies were no longer just a rich family with a troubled kid. They were the face of a broken system. I spent the summer volunteering at a clinic and studying for the MCAT. It felt almost normal. No stalkers. No sugar in my gas tank. Just patience, flashcards, and quiet. Word spread that the Tinkies had finally enrolled Blake in a therapeutic program, their last remaining option. Of course, they spun it as a family decision, not a desperate move. But we weren't buying it. Vicky's sources confirmed their marriage was crumbling. Mr. Tinky had moved out. Years of sweeping problems under silk rugs had finally caught up with them. I started the next school year cautiously optimistic. The Tinkies were still powerful, but their grip was slipping. Then came the superintendent hearing. I wore my only blazer and brought 3 binders of evidence. The room was packed. Parents, board members, administrators, and in the back row, the Tinkies and their lawyer, visibly sweating under the heat of a truth they could no longer buy away. We presented everything. Photos, medical reports, recordings, testimonies. 6 years, 5 schools, dozens of incidents. The room fell silent. Even the lawyer's interruptions couldn't stop the truth. When we played the bribery recording, Mrs. Tinky's face turned white. The superintendent announced sweeping policy changes, mandatory violence reporting, donation restrictions, accountability mechanisms. For once, the Tinkies didn't speak. They just sat there while the system they'd controlled for years crumbled around them. Later that night, someone knocked on my basement door. It was Mrs. Tinky. No designer clothes. No champagne glass. Just a tired woman who looked like she hadn't slept in a month. She sat on my thrifted couch like it might reject her. Mr. Tinky moved out, she said quietly. I know we failed him. We thought money would fix things. We were wrong. She didn't offer me hush money this time. She asked what it would take to make things right. Genuinely. Nervously. I showed her the evidence. Photos she'd never seen. Injuries from Blake's past nannies, classmates, teachers. She covered her mouth. Her hands trembled. I didn't know, she whispered. We let our lawyers handle it. I didn't know. She offered something different. Not cash, but help. She'd work with us to get Blake treatment. She'd help compensate the families. She'd stop fighting the policy reforms. It wasn't justice, but maybe it was the start of accountability. We took the offer to the group. Some wanted to keep pushing for full legal action. Others wanted to support the one thing that hadn't been tried yet, real treatment. We agreed on cautious cooperation. We'd give them the chance to follow through. But we weren't putting down our binders just yet. And me? My life finally started to settle. I studied. I slept. I walked across campus without looking over my shoulder. My professors noticed. My grades soared. My letters of recommendation were glowing. One even said, in 20 years, I've never seen a student fight so hard to stay upright and still rise. Sarah and I grew closer through the chaos. She'd shown up when it counted, and our friendship became something solid, earned, not assumed. We studied late into the night, crushed mock exams together, and quietly celebrated every win. After everything, having even one person who truly got it made the healing possible. Shockingly, the Tinkies actually followed through. They set up a victim fund. They hired professionals to train school staff on managing violent behavior. And Mrs. Tinky, yes, that Mrs. Tinky, joined our advocacy group, using her Rolodex for actual good. Blake's treatment moved slowly. His reports showed progress, but it wasn't linear. His program didn't allow visits at first, forcing his parents to face their own enabling patterns in therapy. Mr. and Mrs. Tinky went separately, probably for the best. My MCAT scores were killer. All that crisis mode study discipline paid off big. My essays wrote themselves. Because who needs fiction when your babysitting job almost turned into a court case? The district's investigation ended with 2 principals resigning. The donation for silence, culture crumbled. It was over for now, but the impact would last. I got acceptance letters from multiple medical schools. The admissions committees didn't just see grades, they saw grit. I chose a program known for its work in underserved communities. After what I'd been through, leveling the playing field felt non-negotiable. The Tinkies sold their mansion, bought a modest house near Blake's treatment center, gave up the socialite lifestyle they once clung to like armor. Mrs. Tinky emailed updates now and then. Somehow, she'd become human. Marcus reached out again before graduation. He got his fancy internship, but said it felt hollow. He apologized, really apologized. I forgave him, but didn't forget. Some betrayals don't reset. They just leave marks. Our parent network grew beyond us. We created guides for documenting abuse, templates for formal complaints, a digital vault. What started as my survival strategy became a toolkit for others. Graduation hit harder than I expected. My mom cried when I crossed the stage. My dad gave me one of those rare nods that said everything. From battered babysitter to full scholarship med student. Who saw that coming? That summer, I worked in a clinic serving families like mine, underfunded, overworked, overlooked. It felt right. I'd been that girl once. Helpless, ignored, gaslit. Now I could help someone else. Blake, meanwhile, was making real progress. A year into treatment, and the reports were cautiously optimistic. He was learning to talk through anger, to recognize harm. It wouldn't undo anything, but it meant he might stop the cycle. Maybe. His parents stayed in therapy. Their marriage was shaky, but honest now. The performance was over. What they were building now. It was flawed, but it was real. Before I left for med school, Mrs. Tinky met me for coffee. No entourage. No perfume cloud. Just a woman who looked like she'd been through hell and was trying to come out clean on the other side. She thanked me. Said if I hadn't stood my ground, Blake might have kept spiraling until something irreversible happened. Then she handed me a letter. It was from Blake. Written in big, awkward handwriting. He said he was sorry, that he remembered the night, that he was trying to be better now, that the iPad wasn't worth all this. I kept it, not because it fixed anything, but because it proved something could change. At medical school orientation, the dean said, "Sometimes, doctors must challenge power to protect the vulnerable." I smiled. Been there, done that. I studied alongside classmates who were smart, motivated, and often blissfully unaware of what institutional injustice actually looked like. But I wasn't, and that was my edge. The parent network went national. We had chapters in 3 cities. Vicky published a follow-up piece, one that focused not on Blake, but on the reforms. Real systems had changed. The monster story had become a movement. I found my rhythm in med school. The discipline I built from documenting every insult, every injury, now served me well in patient notes and long shifts. I didn't fall apart when things got hard. I got focused. Blake's second year of treatment went even better. Group therapy, empathy training. He was learning to relate without violence. His parents, now full-blown advocates, spoke at events about mental health in children. Imagine that. At the end of my first year, I got a scholarship, anonymously funded, for students who had survived trauma and turned it into purpose. The irony wasn't lost on me. What the Tinkies meant to destroy had opened doors I never imagined. That summer, I worked at a behavioral clinic for kids like Blake. I saw up close how early intervention could change everything. How overlooked kids became violent kids, and how systems either crushed them or helped them heal. The Tinkies hadn't just imploded, they'd transformed. And so had I. I chose pediatrics. It wasn't even a question. My med school essay said it best. A single unchecked act of violence nearly ended my future. I will spend my life making sure no child, on either end of that equation, gets ignored again. What they meant to break me became my foundation. Honestly, a career pivot born from chaos. Babysitter to badass doctor. Iconic, really.